Hello. It is Wednesday. IB Nation Sports Talk up, rolling, along with Vince D'Addario, Sean Sayers. Thanks for being here today, Vince.
You know what? If it wasn't you, I don't think I would have done it. But since it's you, I'm here.
I appreciate that.
Just for you, buddy.
I do appreciate that. It's been a crazy, like I've been things that I've been trying to get done this week that are out of my control. I'm probably 1 for 5, something like that. Not a very good percentage. Now here's the upside. The one is going to be, I'm not going to give the name because I don't like giving away names
just in case
who are coming up on that chance that something happens.
Right.
But the one that I hit on is going to be a good guess next week.
Nice.
I'm very excited about it.
I like it.
Yes.
I have a severe case. I don't even know what you can't really call it senioritis because I come back next year. But like I'm ready for summer. Like
ready for school to end.
Like I haven't completely checked out or anything, like still doing my job and all those things, but man, has my attention turned to like the first week of June and on. You know what I mean? Like and you can probably tell because I did the schedule for June and July or May, whatever it was for us, because it's all I can think about. I'm ready to jump in, do afternoon shows, go to all these camps and just not have to worry about, anything.
Things.
Yes. Adult responsibilities.
I hear you.
I don't want them.
Tommy wants to know why the video didn't start for a few seconds after I started the stream. Probably because here's what happened. I was telling Vince right before we started. I've got sitting down to my right, I've got this power box, like a power surge box in case, not just like your typical, it's specific, to protect the whatever.
All the equipment, all the high dollar.
All my stuff is plugged into it. Well, on the back of the power surge box is the switch. And every once in a while, when I roll my chair back and then roll it forward, one of the wheels will hit the switch and turn off the switch. So at about 5 till 6, killed the power on my internet router. And I was waiting for the internet router to boot back up. And I was connected to my hotspot on my phone for a minute. And then finally, the internet tower came back up. And so I switched it over. And I think that has something to do with it. It was still, I think, in the process of booting. So we're here.
We are.
Hopefully glitch free right now.
That's the hope, man. That is the absolute hope. Whew.
Well, and I just got a text saying the feed is off on YouTube.
What?
It's good now. I got it. We're good.
What happened?
We're good.
The voice of God is here. And I think you probably heard my whole explanation. That's probably why. Yeah. Because I had to switch over right before we started. And I think that for whatever reason, there was still kind of a mouse in the machinery.
We're good now.
Okay.
Hit the like button. Woo! Thank you, Ryan. All right. I was wondering why he popped in. I mean, he doesn't usually pop in the back end, and we're sitting here looking at him in the back end.
I'm not going to say correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't think I'm wrong here. I think he popped in because, we can see who's like in the green room, we'll call it, like in the background, and he's eating dinner right in front of us, just making me hungry. That's what it is.
What we need.
Right there.
What we need. See, there's no way to like actually black out the video.
No.
We need like a mute the video button is what we need.
It's making me hungry, man.
I know.
Jeez.
I know.
All right. It's okay though. I can power through. I'm good.
Open up his food, and I think he just left.
It's fantastic.
Hopefully things are working though. Because look, we're sitting here talking to each other. I hope everything else is actually working.
Hope so. I hadn't even thought about going to look.
We'll find out.
Yeah, we will.
Well, you want to go ahead and start this off? We got some good questions queuing up. Speaking of the one and only Brian Driscoll.
Nice.
He gets the first question tonight. He's the boss. He put the first question in, so he gets
go with it.
What are your thoughts on the joke or 24/7 Sports not ranking Notre Dame as a top 30 team for this season?
Man, I would love to think that, maybe this guy is a little overworked, got a lot on his plate. His profile picture looked like he was a younger guy. So maybe he has young kids at home. Maybe he just forgot to put Notre Dame in. Like maybe it just, it slipped his mind. But then he goes ahead and doubles down in the comments as to why
he dug
he
himself
didn't
a
have
hole.
Notre Dame.
And let's just the guy's name is Brandon Marcello. He says, why no Notre Dame? Too many new pieces at crucial spots, quarterbacks, receivers. Want to see how they fare against Texas A&M before fully jumping on board. Love the coach late last season. I had a very hard time deciphering what to expect and choose to keep them for early summer. Summer rankings, not end of season projections. Notre Dame could be top 10 team versus schedule, but I hesitate to rank in summer because of how slow things came together last season with new pieces. So I've got that in the back of my mind with the new quarterback rankings. Blah, 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 blah.
So he just contradicted himself.
So how is USC number 8 then, if you're going to use that as your justification?
Thank you.
Because USC lost the number 1 pick in the NFL draft, who was the Heisman Trophy winner the year before. They lost they've got 2 new coordinators out there. They've got, huge questions on defense. How is USC number 8 by that argument? And Notre Dame is not even in the top 30. It makes zero sense if that is your rationalization.
And even his explanation didn't make sense because A, he says he's waiting to see how they do against Texas A&M. And then B, he says, well, my midsummer rankings, I'll probably boost them up. What? They're not playing Texas A&M in June. So how that part makes no sense to me either.
Well, how about, so again, USC gets to be number 8, though. How about that USC LSU game right off the top? Or you don't want to see how USC is going to fare with all the question marks they've got?
And didn't Notre Dame boat race USC last year with Caleb Williams,
with the number 1 overall draft pick?
And they have to. Their defense was arguably one of the worst defenses in college football, but there's no question marks there. They got an entire new defensive staff, and they're going to try to, bring this defense out of the ashes like the Phoenix, right? But there's no question marks at USC. That's a top 10 team.
Well,
really? Where's this guy live? LA?
No, and you're exactly right. USC has far more question marks than what Notre Dame has, whether it's transfer portal or not, just because, again, when you look at how inconsistent their offense was last year with the number 1 overall draft pick and with the guy who is supposed to be the quarterback king, Cliff Kingsbury, who is again, he's gone now. He's with the Washington. He's in the NFL again. And, by the way, sidetrack, I still stand by I think Cliff Kingsbury is completely overrated. Everything for Cliff Kingsbury started with his connection to Patrick Mahomes, who he completely underachieved with at Texas A&M. But as soon as Patrick Mahomes got good in the NFL and threw 50-plus touchdown passes in his first season as a starting quarterback, Cliff Kingsbury's stock skyrocketed. And, he has ridden that forever. But what's it gotten him? There's been no tangible success that Cliff Kingsbury has had since then. He got to draft his own quarterback in Arizona with Kyler Murray a year after they took Josh Rosen in the first round of the draft. What did they ever do in Arizona? Nothing. And so he ends up back at USC making boatloads of money. And he completely rode the Patrick Mahomes coattails to where he got. But again, USC being number 8 with far more questions. Notre Dame has a top 5 defense in the nation. So it's okay if you want to question maybe how consistent Notre Dame is going to be, even though they picked up an offensive coordinator who obviously developed a Heisman Trophy winner of his own last year and the number 2 overall draft pick, last year. They added him. They added a quarterback who everyone thought was going to be a first-round NFL draft pick last year, plus a bunch of proven wide receivers to make up for the fact that Notre Dame's receiver room has been so inconsistent. Do you think that the top 5 defense that they've got, though, is not going to kind of be able to carry the load for a little bit while maybe some speed bumps do get worked out against Texas A&M or whoever it happens to be. And Texas A&M, by the way, it's not like they're going to Alabama. It's not like they're going to Texas. They're going to Texas A&M, who has a new head coach of their own and a lot of their own questions to figure out.
Look, there's questions across the board on almost every single one of these teams that he has in the top 30. And then the hilarious part is that he doubles down in the comments too. And they're like, and here's a group of teams to watch.
Right.
Notre Dame's not a part of that
They're not
group
Notre
either.
Dame. Yeah.
So they're not
like
even
Notre
in the
Dame
top
is still,
40.
is like 40th, basically.
It's just, if the offense at Notre Dame was an absolute dumpster fire, okay, I'll piggyback off of kind of what you were saying. If the offense is an absolute dumpster fire, worst case scenario at every position, okay, they're calling the media and asking them to suit up on offense, okay? Notre Dame is still a top 25 team just because of their defense, because teams aren't going to be able to score on Notre Dame, okay? They only need a competent offense to win 10 games, and that by itself makes this a top 20, top 15, top 10 team by itself. If the offense is what we think it can be, then this is absolutely ludicrous. I mean, the defense alone, who there are no question marks in my opinion, because of what they've done the last couple of years under Al Golden. He's back for his third year and all these different things. The defense alone will win this team a ton of games. Alone. It's just, it's absolutely ludicrous.
Look, man, I'm a Kansas alum. I love my alma mater. I like the fact that Lance Leopold actually has them in the conversation of being a football program now, but Kansas is at number 24, and there's no world in which Kansas football is going to be better than Notre Dame football this season. I'm sorry. He's got Liberty at number 30. Do you remember what happened when Liberty actually played a team in their bowl game last year? They lost to Oregon 45-6. And you're going to put Liberty at number 30. They've got Iowa at number 20.
Iowa, who can't score.
Iowa still doesn't have an offense.
Right.
Yes. They're there solely on their defense, and Notre Dame's defense will be every bit as good as Iowa's, if not markedly better this season.
Correct. And that alone should get them on this list someplace just because of their defense. He can talk about all the question marks he wants on offense. The defense doesn't have those question marks. That should put them in the top 20 all by itself. But we're talking logic here, Sean, and we know that logic is not applying to this particular list. I mean, you could go down the list and you could come up with teams that are going to have a new quarterback. They're going to have new wide receivers. They're going to have new coordinators, new head coaches, new staffs completely that are on this list. And yet Notre Dame is nowhere to be found in his top 40.
NC State at number 22. Last I checked, Notre Dame beat NC State on the road last year.
3 touchdowns, was it?
Yep. I'm just looking to see, now Clemson is in there at number 14. Louisville's in there at 27. A&M at number 17 is way too high. I'm sorry.
Complete, like, how many guys did they have hit the portal? Like some ridiculous number, and then they got a brand new staff.
They've got bigger questions. They've got bigger questions at quarterback than Notre Dame has. New quarterback or not.
Yes.
And Notre Dame's got a better quarterback than what A&M is going to have.
Well, you just pin your hopes on Miller Moss, Sean Stiers, and you'll be good to go.
I'm looking here to see who Virginia Tech at number 28. This just feels, like I've seen a lot of people saying clickbait. Look, this post has got 1 million engagements, and I don't know, not 1 million, but it's got a lot of engagements. 282,000 views is what it says right now. That's a lot, and it just feels very
feels shady. I'm sorry, is what it feels like to me.
It's like a typical, you leave Notre Dame out, and what are you going to get? You're going to get a lot of engagements with that, right? Like it just feels like very low-hanging fruit to me.
Yes, it does.
Brian's been like sitting back. He's just.
Can I please join? I know this is your show, but can I please join? Because I have to talk about. I have to add to this.
Okay.
How are you going to have Miami number 16? Right?
Yeah.
Doesn't Miami have a brand new quarterback and a brand new running back and brand new receivers that they got through the portal? They went 7. What was their record last year? Did They went to a bowl game and got smacked by some garbage team in a bowl game, right? Like, this is the whole thing, is how slow it started. They lost to Ohio State on the last play of the game.
Because they had 10 guys on the field.
Their slow start included a 21-point road win over your number 22 team, who has a new quarterback, by the way, from Coastal Carolina, who's going to be like a 13th-year senior because the NFL doesn't want him and nobody else wanted him, and Grayson McCall, and you boat raced him last year with the issues that you had. You've got Tennessee at 15, who has a brand new quarterback, who'll be a sophomore this year, lost their 1,000-plus yard wide receiver who went to the NFL draft, and they're going to go from what they were last year. So he acts like, oh, their slow start last year. Their other loss was to Louisville, who was a 10-win team this year, is also in your top 30 on the road, who is going to have a new quarterback, new receivers, and new running backs this year, by the way, and just lost their one running back replacement to the portal, who they just got in January in the portal. Because they were, because it's just like, this whole thing is so lazy. And the thing that bothers me is people's like, you shouldn't give them click engagement. You know what, Vince, you know this. You know how many times I ignore this crap? But sometimes you deserve to get dragged so bad that no one ever respects you again enough.
Right.
Because you've lost your ability to be employed in this job because you did this for clicks.
Right.
You said an idiotic, stupid thing for clicks. Sorry, go ahead, Sean.
Missouri's number 13. Drew Pine is getting ready to graduate at Notre Dame after sitting out the spring semester, and he's going to go to Missouri and compete for a starting job this fall. And Missouri's the number 13 team in the country.
It's so
I forgot he was going to Missouri.
Florida State lost their entire team, right? So, and they're 12th. This whole notion of Notre Dame's got a new quarterback. Okay, cool. Their new quarterback is a former Power 5 quarterback who, started his career off by going, 13-4 at Duke. Won 9 games at Duke with his top receiver at Duke in 2022 was the kid he beat out at quarterback in the spring. That's who his top receiver was in 2022 at Duke. But he's going to have issues at Notre Dame, right? I mean, you're one of your new additions at wide receiver is a guy who was the number 2 receiver on your number 14 team last year, Bo Collins. And he's probably not even going to start at Notre Dame this year. The whole thing is so dumb, and I think you guys nailed the whole thing. If you grant his premise, Sean, you nailed this. If you grant his premise of all these issues at Notre Dame being, quarterback, and if you granted that premise, they at least belong in the top 25 on their defense alone.
Right.
And the offensive line that is going to be the starting offensive line, you just watch go score 40 points against Oregon State. I mean, it's like, if you wanted to say, hey, look, they should be 21st, 22nd, I'm not buying the hype about Notre Dame, that's fine.
Right. Keep them out of the top
Freeman's
10,
had 2
even
years
top 15,
at Notre Dame.
Whatever. Yeah.
Exactly. He's had 2 years at Notre Dame. 1 year he won 9 games with Missouri's backup quarterback, right? And in the second year, they won 10 games, beat your number 8 team who's got a new quarterback, 2 new running backs, 2 new receivers, and gave up 34 points a game last year. And got boat raced by Notre Dame by 4 touchdowns. And all the guys that made plays in that game for Notre Dame on defense are back.
Yeah, they're all back. They're
all back.
Right.
And they're your number 18. Well, they looked great in the bowl game that nobody cares about when Louisville had half their team not playing. Right? I mean, seriously. And if we're going to go off bowl performances, then why is Florida State in your top 30?
Because they got boat raced too.
They got beat by 60.
And Liberty. Yeah.
They got beat by over half a hundo, guys.
Right.
In the bowl game last year.
Right.
So, there's just in Utah's at 9. What's different between Penn State and Notre Dame? Honestly, what's the difference between Penn State and Notre Dame? Based on last year, what's the difference? Didn't Penn State just lose their top receiver from last year he just left for the portal? So the whole thing is that bothers me. It's such lazy analysis, and this is what now defines 247 Sports. This is what they've become. They are mortified and petrified at how On3 is destroying them. And so instead of saying, hey, let's lean into analysis and providing good, they're saying, let's lean into stupidity and maybe we can get enough clicks
stupidity and
compete with them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's what they've done. And this is one of the most absurd, ridiculously stupid lists I've ever seen in my life. I mean, it is just, in Arizona at 21, they've got their quarterback back and the top receiver back. Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah,
but didn't they just have to replace their entire coaching staff?
Yes,
I was
the
gonna
entire
say,
staff.
The staff just went to Washington. That's right.
So, I mean,
Nebraska. I also should Alabama be a top 10 team just based on the talent that Nick Saban left behind alone? And the fact that they, did get a new head coach? Probably, but
right.
There's still going to be questions because you have a completely new staff.
Your point is you're applying the standard that he has set for Notre Dame.
Right.
If you're going to apply the standard that he has set for Notre Dame, then yes, you should have questions about Alabama.
Right.
They don't have the same, they don't have the same head coach that led them all those victories. They don't have the same defensive coordinator. They've lost this. They lost 2 cornerbacks that were drafted in the top 35 of the NFL draft. I mean, to your point, Sean, if I were to start applying that logic, why is Miami in your top 30? Why is NC State in your top 30? I mean, why is Michigan? Michigan lost their whole freaking team.
There you go.
And staff.
And their whole coaching staff.
And a quarterback to the top of the draft.
They lost their quarterback. They lost their top running back. They lost 3 of their top 4 receivers. They lost 4 of their starting 5 offensive linemen. They had 13 guys drafted. The entire coaching staff, except for Sharon Moore and one other guy's gone. His both coordinators are gone. Mike Elson's gone. I mean, if you think about Mike Elson built 2 top 5 defensive lines in college football last year. He built Notre Dame's and he built Michigan's.
That's true.
I mean, you know what I mean? And he's gone. But yet Michigan's number 7. And I'm not even against Michigan being number 7. You guys, I mean, you're a champ till somebody beats you. I'm okay with that. But if you're going to apply that same logic to Notre Dame, Michigan doesn't even know who their quarterback's going to be.
Right.
It's either going to be Jack Tuttle or Alex Orji? Really? You're more confident in that than with year 1 of Sharon Moore than you are of Riley Leonard, who won 13 games in his first 17 starts at Duke. Do you know how many games Duke won in the 3 years prior to Riley Leonard becoming the starter? You all know the answer. 10. He won 9 in his first season at Duke with his best receiver being the quarterback he beat out in the spring. This is just so stupid. Just so stupid. And I was like, I'm not going to jump in. I'm not going to jump in. Why is Iowa State?
I got to jump in.
Why is Iowa State in the top 30? Didn't they go 7-6 last year? So the one premise he said is, things didn't start well they started slowly for Notre Dame last year. Okay, then why is Iowa State in your list? Why is Oklahoma State in your list? Oklahoma State got beat by South Alabama by 23 points in September last year. Had 2 losses in September last year. So if you're going to talk about slow starts, why aren't we talking about Oklahoma State? So all your criteria is total BS. And like you said, he did it because he knows the Notre Dame fan base was going to drag him, and he would rather get
even non-Notre Dame fans are chiming in. They're like, "What is this?"
You know what it is, Vince? We live in a society now where someone would rather be known for being an idiot than not known at all. That's really what it comes down to. I'd rather be known because I was on some show where I made a complete fool of myself than for nobody to know who I am. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to make you famous, and I'm going to let everybody know that you're an idiot. And you're going to get dragged, and no one should ever listen to you again because you are useless. And look, you don't have to be a Notre Dame fan to know this is stupid.
Right, exactly.
We could argue, hey, should Notre Dame be a top 10 team or should they be more top 15 or 20? That's a fair argument.
Let's have that argument.
Top 10.
Yeah.
You want to have them lower, totally fine with that. We can have that conversation.
Right.
But to list 30 teams and then 6 more, and you have teams on your list that had a losing record last year. Nebraska went 5-7. They lost by 22 points to Colorado. Colorado. They lost to Iowa. They lost to Wisconsin, Maryland, Michigan State. But yet you've got them ranked. Why? Because they have a true freshman who is ranked high? I mean, oh my gosh. It's just I'm so over the stupidity.
Yes.
Concur.
I'm so over the stupidity. And that's why I wanted these guys to get dragged. And
I think mission accomplished.
Yes. 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 We should just make this its own segment, Sean, when you cut it up today, man.
I think you're right.
Yes.
I think it's, we might just be able to at this point.
I'm going to let you guys get back to it. But yeah, I just, we're going to do our own top 25 at some point in time this summer, Vince. And so we'll try to not be idiots when we do ours. Okay.
I'm not making any promises.
I'm going to leave Alabama.
That's a good place to start.
Yeah.
Don't be an idiot.
Don't be an idiot. Here's my career advice to all of you. Okay. For 3 professionals that have grown up the ranks and different things. It's like, don't be an idiot. It's like the Lawrence Taylor scene. You guys remember that from Happy Gilmore? And this is why I come to my final thing, kids. Don't smoke crack.
That was from Waterboy.
Waterboy, yes.
It was
Waterboy.
Waterboy.
Yes.
It's
Yes,
hilarious
great
every
scene.
time.
All right, guys. Have
Back
a great
to dinner.
show. I promise I'm
Brian.
leaving now. No more dinner, Vince.
So, Vince, let's just keep jumping into the mailbag here.
Let's do it.
What do you
There's
think?
actually some really good questions in here, too.
There are.
Which I would say is a giant step up from last week. So let's go.
Hey, you said it.
I did.
Andre wants to know, will Notre Dame have a better defense because of the linebackers? They dominate the trenches. Cornerback safety will lead the country in interceptions because of the play of the front seven. Thoughts?
Wow. There's a lot to dissect in that particular comment, first of all. I don't know that they're going to be a better defense because of the linebackers. I think that there is going to be a bit of a learning curve for the linebackers, okay? Are they more athletic? Are they longer? Are they all of these things? Yes, no doubt. But it's not going to be perfect right away. I'll just say that. If they're going to be a better defense, it's because I think the front is better, number one. And I don't want to say that the secondary is better than it was last year, but you've got year 3 Benjamin Morrison. You've got, Xavier Watts coming off of his, Bronco Nagurski or whatever the best defensive player in the country award is. And you got, a guy like Christian Gray. Look, Cam Hart had a hell of a season last year. So, Christian Gray, Cam Hart, okay, whatever. But I think the front four is what could make this defense better in the long run, right? I don't think I would pin it on the linebackers. I think they're going to have to bring the linebackers along a little bit.
I think you're going to get every bit as much production out of R.J. Oben as you got from Javonte Jean-Baptiste last year. And obviously you have Cross and Mills back. Jason Onye is a year older and a year wiser. I think he's going to be a factor. I've said before, I'm looking forward to seeing him in the like the nickel and dime type packages when he gets a chance to get in that interior line and get after the quarterback a little in the middle, because like whatever concerns we have, and they're still legit about the Viper position until we see somebody produce. Remember, they still had a good amount of sacks last year without that Viper position being very productive last year as well. And just what you're saying between what they're going to get out of the defensive line and the secondary as well. The biggest question with the secondary is what we've talked about before, the depth until and if they add somebody, and like what maybe they're able to get out of one of these freshmen coming in. Are they going to still add somebody from the portal? What's Benjamin Morrison's health going to be? But otherwise, yeah. So I don't think they're necessarily going to be. I think one of the bigger differences is just those linebackers, because of the way they play. I think they're going to cover a lot of ground and just, sort of be able to cover more vertically. I think they'll be really good with that athleticism and speed that they have getting after things. So are they going to be better because of the linebackers? No, but they're still going to be a really good defense.
Oh yeah.
Really, because there's so much around those relatively young and inexperienced linebackers that, that it'll help cover some things. I think, especially early on as they gain some of that experience.
Because there's really not a lot of room to get markedly better than they were last year, right? I mean, this was a top 5 defense last year,
right?
In my opinion. So, Thomas Harper is going to be missed. Cam Hart is going to be missed, right? JD Bertrand, I don't care what people say, is going to be missed. And so those are big shoes to fill. Can they fill them? I think they can, but I don't want to, be like, oh, they're going to be so much better this year than they were last year. I'm not ready to go that far, because I don't want to disrespect the guys that were here this past year and played really, really good defense, right? And so do they have the personnel to potentially do that? Yes. But again, even if they are exactly the same as they were last year, that's a top 5 defense. That's pretty stinking good.
Yep. DK, if Riley Leonard is 95.4% healthy throughout the season, what is your season record ceiling?
The ceiling is 12-0. I mean, that's the ceiling, because find me a quarterback.
But if he's 95.2%, then I think that drops.
12.
It's just off the board.
0 for 12. I mean, there's no. But you find me a quarterback after 12 games. Let's say he plays 12 games because he's 95.4% healthy. there's not one quarterback in the country that's going to be at 100% in game 12. They're just not. I mean, you get banged around, you tweak this, you tweak that. I mean, it's football. Like, I don't care what position you play. You're going to tweak something, except for maybe kicker and punter. Right. Because they don't get hit. But like everybody else, you're going to be playing. You're not going to be 100%. So the ceiling, the best possible, is still 12-0. It's still 12-0. And if he's 95.4%, the absolute basement is 10 wins for me.
Completely agree. I mean, just what you said. I mean, basically 95.5%. So you're talking about
that's pretty stinking healthy.
4.5%. Yeah. So I mean, you're talking about what, like a sore knee or a sore hip or whatever it happens to be. Maybe a finger. Like if that 4.5% would happen to be like he can't grip the ball that well. Maybe that could affect it. But like I completely agree with what you're saying. 12-0 is absolutely the ceiling if Riley Leonard is that healthy all season long.
Now, he did say, he goes, I meant with the playoffs. Now, that's a different conversation because
you don't know who the matchups are going to be.
Yes. Yeah. I need to know who they're matched up with. I need to see, how those teams are during the year. I mean, is Notre Dame going to play a team that, is weak at corner, but really strong up the middle? Like, what are the matchups? Because that makes such a difference. Is Notre Dame hosting the first round? Right? That's going to be key to this whole thing. And then what are the matchups in the next couple of rounds after that? So that is, I don't want to be Mr. Sunshine Homer man that's going to be like 16-0. Clearly, that's what they're going to do. I need to see the matchups because there's going to be teams that Notre Dame's going to match up really well against that are ranked in the top 10. And there's going to be teams that they may not match up.
If they're 12-0, they're going to get to host a first round playoff game, which means that they should probably, again, they would be the number 5 seed, but that means that they would host the number 12 seed, which most likely is going to be a group of 5 team, or it's going to be, like a team that's obviously lost a few games sitting in that 12 spot. So, but it's all, it's just like March Madness. It comes down to matchups. Like it's not always just about you. It's about who you're matching up with as well. But I would think if they're 12-0, they're going to get to host that first round game, probably having, 90% chance at least to win that first round game. And then kind of all bets are off once you get to that next round because you're getting tougher teams as you go along.
Well, it's like a perfect example, right, Sean? 2012. Right? If Notre Dame plays against Kansas State, they probably win the national championship. They end up playing against Alabama and they get their doors blown off of them. It's all about matchups, man. Yep. It's all about matchups.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks for the super chat as always, Anthony. We do appreciate it. There's one that I was just looking at. I like this one.
All right.
Salty. Should Billy Strouth move to left guard to team up with the Sasquatch or the Jasquatch, he says, at left tackle? Charles Jagasaw, a la Quinton and McGlinchey.
No, I don't think so because, you're talking about a road grader group, right? You're talking about Jagasaw and in this theory, Billy Strouth, and there'd just be like road graders in the run game. There's another guy that's vying for time at left guard that could be a road grader, man, and that's Rocco Spindler. I mean, his what he's best at is run blocking. What he needs the most work in is pass blocking. And so, no, I would not move Billy over there. I would leave Rocco over there, and I think you've got one heck of a 1-2 punch in the run game on the left side if it's Rocco and Jagasaw.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yep. Totally agree with that. The goal is to simply get your best 5 guys out there.
Yeah.
On the field, whatever position that it happens to be. They're going to be really deep at tackle. And I think we both think that it's probably going to end up being Rocco over there at left guard. And that obviously, kind of, leaves Coogan as the, who knows? I mean,
who knows?
That's TBD, but Rocco was definitely playing better late. And what Joe Rudolph said this spring when talking about these guys is Pat Coogan was the most consistent guy of the guys who were playing those guard spots last fall.
Sure.
And ultimately, that's how Coogan got into the starting lineup. That's how Rocco got into the starting lineup. He was more consistent than Billy Strouth, even though we all obviously Shrouth he had the higher stars, and
Sure.
like he's the one that everybody wanted to be in there. Shrouth had his moments, but he wasn't consistent enough. But by the time Rocco got hurt later in the season, Shrouth had been working at it for 70% of the season, and he was able to jump in and hit the ground running, and he did really well. And just ultimately, it's going to be about consistency. And again, get your best 5 guys out there, regardless of which spots they happen to be in. Dynamite question, though. Yeah. Salty. Alex asking about BK whining about his new program already. We will address that in rapid fire.
Oh, yes.
We will actually play the audio for you in rapid fire. So
I am. You want to talk about carving out sections of the show?
You've been waiting for that one all day.
I don't know if I'm going to get 20 minutes out of it. I'm not a professional ranter like Brian is, but I definitely have my thoughts on the whole scenario. I can promise you that. Oh my goodness. It was like getting punched in the face with a blast from the past.
Joe wants to know if we think there are any sleepers on Notre Dame's schedule next year. If so, which teams?
Sleepers on the schedule. Let's see here. Let me pull it up. I don't think Texas A&M is a sleeper this year. Maybe next year because of, their coaching staff. And I do believe in their coaching staff for the most part. And I think they could have talent down there, but they're not going to be a sleeper this year. Don't know enough about Northern Illinois. They're not going to be a sleeper in the national championship hunt. Purdue, no. Miami of Ohio, they won the MAC last year. So I guess they're not really a sleeper if they win the MAC again. But they're not going to be a team that is vying for that 12th spot, I don't think. Louisville, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You just go one at a time.
Okay.
I think we found out last year you can't write off Louisville. Now they're going to have a new quarterback and the whole thing.
I believe in their coach, though, too. I do think he's a really good offensive coach. I think they've got an opportunity, to make some noise. Could that be a quote-unquote sleeper? Depends on what your definition of a sleeper.
I was going to say, I'm not sure they're a sleeper anymore after winning 10 games.
There you go. Are they going to be somebody that's contending for the national championship? I don't know if I'm ready to go down that road. Are they a top 25 team? Sure.
Right.
I
am kind of curious. Stanford is the next game on the schedule. In year 2 of Troy Taylor, they were obviously awful last year. I know he's doing better on the recruiting trail right now. I don't know that gives them much of a bump this season, but I am wondering just year 2, do they at least show noticeable improvement from what they were last year? Because they were not good last year.
No, they were not good. Could they be a sleeper team to maybe be 500? Sure. I'm not ready to anoint them. Plus, they're going to be in the ACC. That's a lot of travel for those guys. I'm not convinced Stanford's going to be able to jump up and do anything. But again, are they going to exceed expectations? I could see that, because if their expectations are 4 wins, then they could exceed expectations.
Yeah.
Georgia Tech, no. Navy, no. Florida State obviously is an interesting one because of the success that they had last year. Now everybody's gone, and so what kind of development are they do? All of those kinds of questions I think now are legitimate, right? For Florida State, and what is that going to look like this year? After Brian said a half a hundo got hung on him in the bowl game, how do you recover from that? That's a legitimate question. And then I don't think Virginia is, and then Army, no, and then Southern Cal. Apparently they're the number 8 team in the country, so I guess they could be a sleeper.
Yeah, I'm not seeing that. I'm not seeing that at all.
No.
Could Miami, Ohio give Notre Dame at least a close game? Maybe. I don't see them being able to score much, though, on
who's this?
Notre Dame's defense. Miami, Ohio.
Oh, yeah. And look, they're a well-coached team. Chuck Martin's doing great things down there. And I think, Miami's one of the best teams in the MAC, which makes them one of the, better teams in the group of 5. That's awesome. But they're no match for Notre Dame. We said that about Ball State a few years ago, too. But that was a different conversation as well.
Interesting one from Tommy. Buy, sell, hold. He really likes the buy, sell, hold format.
Boy.
No team that stayed in their conference will win the conference championship this year. So you're saying that Ohio State, Michigan, you're crossing them off?
no.
Ohio
No,
State's
I'm
the
not ready to
favorite
go there
right now.
right
Like,
now. I would
Washington's going to lose a ton coming in. Oregon's still going to be good. I think that Ohio State is definitely the Big Ten favorite. I think the SEC, with as many teams are in there, totally up for grabs, though.
Yeah, the SEC's up for grabs. I'd give you that. I think Georgia's probably still the team to beat down there, and they were still in the conference last year. So I would sell the whole premise, because I also don't think Stanford or Cal are going to win the ACC. So, and they're the only new teams in the ACC.
Right.
So I would sell this one across the board. I think the only one where I think it's a possibility would be the Big 12.
I think a lot of people making Utah the favorite going into the Big 12,
and I could see that.
Season.
I could see that. So that's the only conference that I would be like, you know what, maybe the Big 12. Other than that, I'm selling it completely. And the other thing is, people are saying something about Louisville and all this other stuff. Notre Dame remembers what happened to them when they went to Louisville last year. I promise you that, because that derailed pretty much everything that they had going for them that season, or last season, after the loss to Ohio State. They are not going to overlook Louisville. Louisville is going to be in for a absolute dogfight at Notre Dame Stadium. No doubt in my mind. I feel bad for the Cardinals. I'll just say that.
Michael wants to know, transfer player that can make big impact offense and defense without Riley Leonard included.
Okay. So offensively, let's see. I think you got to go wide receiver if we're going to go offense, right? If we're talking about transfers. So I'm going to go wide receiver, and then out of those wide receivers, it was interesting to hear Brian say that he doesn't think Bo Collins is going to start. I thought that was a key piece of information. So I will say Chris Mitchell. Okay, I think he's going to have the biggest impact offensively as far as transfer students are, or transfer, student athletes are concerned.
Yeah.
And then I will say Jordan Clark. I think Jordan Clark is going to have the biggest impact defensively, playing that nickel spot.
I will say I like the Chris Mitchell pick, and I was looking at that. We got the wide receiver question that's going to be leading off rapid fire. Yep. So got some thoughts on him, but I mean, for sure. I mean, the guy had 1,100 yards last year, and I think that with the speed that he's got and the experience that he's got, we expect him to be, a big time playmaker type guy. That's the reason they went out and got Chris Mitchell from the portal. And of the transfer portal guys, I think he makes the most sense on offense. I'll go with Rod Hurd, even though we haven't had a chance to see him on defense. I think that he is going to really, like any questions that there might be with the secondary. And I think that he could be a versatile guy as well when we start talking about, what's the depth look like and that kind of stuff. I like Jordan Clark as well, but I'm going to go with Rod Hurd, the guy coming in from Northwestern, as my defensive impact guy.
Fair enough. I like it.
Salty, if the over-under for punt and or kickoff returns by the Irish for a touchdown this season is 3.5, what are you taking? So over-under 3.5 total kick punt.
I'm taking the under because I don't know. I mean, there was like years in between the last kickoff return and the back-to-back kickoff returns. I think it was a year or two in between. Punt returns are going to be very instant in a similar situation. There's no chance they're going to return 4 kicks for punt return or for touchdowns. No chance.
Yeah. Unless, they get, in the Northern Illinois and Miami, Ohio games, sure. I guess you never know in those kind of games. I would still say 3 is the maximum because, like you said, it's been so long since it's happened here at Notre Dame. We've obviously seen a few more in the last 3 years or so, but I don't think that they're just all of a sudden going to be this machine taking kicks back for touchdowns this season.
Because if you would have put the number at 2.5, then I think we have a debate. I think you would take the over. I think I would take the under. Because I think it's going to be 2, and you think it's 3. So at 2.5, I think we've got a good conversation going. At 3.5, I think we're both taking the under.
Interesting question from Casey. Over under on how many games the Irish wear pants that are not gold. For example, white, green, blue. He says personally he thinks it's 3 times with at least 2 games in white. And then he follows that up. Part 2, what games would you like to see them wear?
Oh, man, that's
so they caught us all off guard with the icy whites last year at Clemson.
That was awesome, though.
Have a hard time thinking that's going to happen again, though, considering the result, right?
I would love
to go under. I guess there's no. He said 3. I think it's going to be under 3. I think 2 at the most. Maybe. I would think when they go to Yankee Stadium,
they're going to have something different. That's one.
Yeah,
right.
Because that's the Shamrock.
That's the Shamrock Series. It's already been announced. That's the Shamrock Series.
They'll do something different. The question is going to be what? Like, do they go all green for that game?
Nope.
And looking at the home games this year, like Florida State is the biggest home game. So is that going to be the game where they do something different? Would they do something different at Georgia Tech when they play in the Mercedes-Benz Dome?
Oh man, I really hope they bust.
I think they were gold in all but 1 game this year. I think it's only going to be 1.
I'll say 2 because I'm willing it to happen. They can't take those white pants and just put them in a box. They're too fantastic to make that happen. They have to use the white pants. And honestly, I would love to see the green jerseys with the white pants. I think that would be a good look. I love the white on white. Like I would love for it to be 3. I'll say 2 just because I want to will it to happen. As far as which games, we always talked about the big 3 last year. It was obvious what the big games were, right? And I just don't one of the biggest games is the first game of the season, and they're not going to go with an alternate pant in game 1.
Going into Texas A&M game 1. Yeah,
that's just not going to happen, right? If Texas A&M was in the middle of the season, maybe. You know what I mean? Maybe. But I don't see that happening. And so your next biggest games are Louisville, Florida State, and USC. And I think USC is too steeped in tradition for them to change up their look. Although I'd love to see them go white on white in the Coliseum. I think that'd be friggin' awesome. But I'll say 2 and just hope that
I just don't think we're going to see the white on white look in a true road game.
Oh man, I want it so badly. I want it so badly.
I don't see it.
So awesome.
No. Especially in that opener against Texas A&M.
I know. Like I said, that game would be perfect if it was in the middle of the season. It's just not going to be. It's not going to be the first game of the year.
Yeah. On the subject of uniforms, Tyler wants to know what game do we think will be the green out game? I mean, it's got to be Florida State, November 9th, right?
I personally think the Louisville game is bigger, but the Florida State game has more cachet because of who Florida State is historically. Yeah. You know what I mean? But just from got to win this game, man. It's a big I think Louisville at the end of the day will be a better football team than Florida State. How about I put it that way? I think Louisville will be a better football team than Florida State. So I believe that game is bigger, but Florida State is Florida State. I mean, and all the history between Notre Dame and Florida State and all of that stuff, then yes, I agree with you. I think that'll be the green game.
Yeah, I mean, and it could be Louisville just because Louisville is September 28th. Florida State is November 9th. It's going to be a lot warmer for the Louisville game than the Florida State game. And I think that's a factor because
that's true.
Like when you're talking about night games in November, and we expect that's good, like people are going to be wearing coats.
Yeah.
So the ability to green out is going to be a little bit tougher.
Good call.
If that's a factor at all, right?
That's a good call. Look at you thinking with the brain, the common sense side of things. Makes a lot of sense.
Try every now and then. A lot of attire questions. Irish fan, any thoughts on the shirt? He says, not sure that color is going to intimidate anyone.
That color reminds me of when my children were infants. And that was what was in the diaper before they moved on to
not a fan. Foods. Not a fan of the color. The logos aren't bad. Just not a fan of the color.
The color's terrible, man. Yeah. Don't be afraid to just go with green or blue. Don't be afraid of that. That's okay. Those are the colors. of Notre Dame.
And look, they encourage greenouts. I would like to see the shirt just be green every year. Maybe you vary the shade of the,
good call.
The green, but I would like to see it be green every year. Green or navy blue is the only way to go. I don't want royal blue. They've done that before. That's not your color, but I would just like to see it be green.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the royal either. Yeah, it's got to be the navy. It's got to be the navy look.
Now, I don't know if DK is actually serious about this. He says his mom secretly subscribed to the sports package on cable to keep my dad preoccupied. What would you secretly purchase to keep your wife out of your hair, figuratively speaking?
Man, you're just trying to get me in trouble.
Boy, man.
I mean, first of all, I can't secretly purchase anything because my wife's in charge of the finances. There are no secrets. There's no secrets, people. Like, I have to tell my wife not to look at the bank account when I go shopping for, like, Mother's Day, for example, or birthdays or Christmas. There are no secrets. So I just feel like there's no good answer to this because this is the time when my wife would flip on the show. And then whatever I say will be wrong. So I have nothing, DK. I'm sorry. Nothing.
What would you secretly purchase to keep your wife? I can't think of anything. I'm stumped on this. Like, I buy stuff without telling my wife. That doesn't mean it's secret. A lot of times.
Without telling, that's a secret, buddy.
Well, I mean, it shows up and it's like, I don't keep it a secret once it's here.
I got
you. Know what I mean? Like, I'm not trying to hide it from her, but.
Look, I speak from experience here. The only thing that keeps my wife occupied would be another child. And I'm not willing to go down that road.
Vince is shopping in China right now. Tommy says, buy or sell a Notre Dame game being played at the Jake, the Cleveland baseball field. We were talking, Jesse and I were talking yesterday about like some unique places that they could play. And I said, San Francisco Giants, Oracle Park out there would be unique. Like we were talking, like I like the football games being played in baseball stadiums and stuff like that. That would be, I mean, to me, that's like if they were ever going to play like a Shamrock Series game in Ohio someplace, that would be one of the more unique places I think that they could play.
I went there during the World Series. It's okay. Like, I just don't know that I would want to see a football game there, if I'm being honest. Like, a unique place for me, and this is because I was really hoping that Notre Dame was going to play there for a bowl game last year, would be Petco Park in San Diego.
Yeah, Jesse brought that one up, actually.
You play Navy in San Diego.
Yep, exactly.
Where the big naval base is. Like, that, I think, has some logic behind it. And they obviously do a football game there every year, so they could easily do that, right? Mm-hmm. And so I agree with Jesse then. I think that would be a fun one to do.
Tommy also says we were talking yesterday about would Notre Dame ever play a game in Australia? Do we buy or sell Notre Dame playing in Australia within the next 8 years?
8 years, it's a very odd number, but sure. I mean,
would I want them to? Yeah, I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
Now, would they actually do it? I don't know. I mean, it's a heck of a long trip.
Yeah, you'd have to have a bye afterwards.
Yeah,
you'd have to make sure.
You would have to do it in early, like
week zero.
Week 0, and then definitely take that bye the next week.
Now, I'm going to plead ignorance here on the, temperatures and the weather of Australia, but isn't it like the opposite of us?
It is, but I have no idea what the weather is doing in August in Australia. I would imagine if it's the opposite. So what, maybe they're going into the spring at that point. I don't know.
But I know you're going over.
But you're also going to be, probably in Melbourne or, someplace like that where you're right on the ocean, so you get some breeze and stuff like that.
The international date line, I think is, you're going to be playing at a weird time. And so that might be an issue, but I mean, I'm all for Notre Dame playing all over the world. I think that, Notre Dame has that big of a draw.
A lot of people selling the idea of Australia because the distance and the cost and things like that.
Well, cost obviously is not an issue for Notre Dame. Let's be clear on that. The Roman Coliseum, says Tyler. That would be tough. It's kind of falling apart.
Yeah, it's like, do you want anyone to actually be able to sit in there and watch the game, or you just want them to play it in the Coliseum?
The idea of it, I like. You know what I mean? Like if it was still looked like it did, like in the Gladiator days, it's like that's.
You could have John Mellencamp, and the walls come tumbling down.
Right.
Playing when as the Coliseum crumbles around the football game.
Right.
Anthony says, if Brian's prediction comes true about Bo Collins, does that say more about him or the improvement of the Notre Dame wide receiver group?
Well, I think it says, man, you should have been here in the spring, number one. Not that he had control over that, but number two, I think it says something about the wide receiver room, to be perfectly honest with you. I think this room is better maybe than some people anticipated at this point in the year. And I think there's a lot of talent. And we're already talking about, man, who's going to be the odd man out of this group because there is so much talent there. I think it says more about the group than it does him.
I would agree with that, because the group is really good. Just what we've got to see so far without Bo Collins. And even if he doesn't start, I think he's going to be part of that rotation of 6 that Mike Brown was talking about. He might not necessarily be a starter, but I do think he is still going to be a factor. And the thing about, he had to finish his degree, basically. Yeah. He couldn't just show up at Notre Dame and finish his degree at Notre Dame because he was so far along in his degree. And, the whole story with that, it was a guy who just needed to finish one more semester. So unfortunately, there wasn't a whole lot he could do about that.
Right.
Vince, are you ready for rapid fire?
Let's go. So ready for rapid fire because I've been thinking about this one all day long.
I've just been sitting here. I was looking at the remaining questions that are in the queue. As always, there are some questions from the mailbag that we will take over with us to rapid fire because I think that they are very good rapid fire. There's a lot of lawn questions, actually.
Like get off my lawn?
Queue right now. No?
Oh.
Even though that would be right up your alley. But
exactly. Get off my lawn, kid.
So ESPN.com has an article with lingering questions for each of the top 25 teams is what it's called. The question they have for Notre Dame is, are there any true stars at wide receiver? This kind of goes with what we were talking about just a second ago. So they mention how the Irish have not had a receiver with 500 plus yards since 2021. It's been a while. Scale of 1 to 10. How confident are you Notre Dame will have a 500-yard wide receiver this season? This takes running backs and tight ends off the board. We're talking strictly wide receivers here.
You realize I'm the worst possible person to ask this question to, right? I'm just saying.
So this is 12 for you, is what you're saying?
I think that Notre Dame has a very good stable of receivers. I think in my eyes, there's a clear-cut number one, and Salty's going to be happy. But it's Jaden Greathouse. I feel like even though the ball is going to be spread out to said running backs and tight ends, I do think Notre Dame has an opportunity to have a 500-yard receiver. I will give this an 8. Okay. So I'm leaving some room, but I do think they have the ability to make that happen this year.
I'm going to put it at a 9, just as you said, to leave some wiggle room because we were both very confident about a lot of things regarding the receivers last year.
I know.
None of it came true, and
none.
80% of the room is gone now at other schools. Yeah. So I will leave at least some wiggle room, but I'm going to put it at a 9. But the main reason why is you have a different offensive coordinator with a different offensive mindset and philosophy coming in. LSU, where Mike Denbrock obviously was last year, had 2 1,000-yard receivers plus another guy who was also over 500 yards. Malik Neighbors had 1,600 yards. Now, Malik Neighbors was obviously a first-round draft pick and very good, all that different kind of stuff. But look, there's going to be a lot more 11 personnel this year. There's probably even going to be a lot more 10 personnel, which is like 10 personnel. What is that? That's like a completely foreign concept, right? Like, my point is, it's going to look a lot different without the extra tight end on the field all the time. So that's naturally going to lend itself to receivers having more opportunities to catch passes just to begin with. So, the next question was going to be your top 2 candidates. You've already given yours, and I'm just going to go with Chris Mitchell and Jaden Greathouse as my top 2, and I would put Faison at number 3 on my list.
Chris Mitchell would have been my next one as well, and then by Faison too. I all of those guys have the ability to be 500-yard receivers, and I do think that Mike Denbrock is going to stretch the field a little bit more. So I think you're going to see more chunk plays in the passing game as well. So you're going to have an opportunity to get there a little bit better.
Correct. Tommy says, if they don't have a single 500-yard receiver this year, things went horribly wrong, or they will have literally been running for 15 yards per rush and average 400 rushing yards per game. Yeah, I mean.
And Michael's not far behind with his comment, too. I want to bring that one up.
Go ahead and throw it up there.
Yeah, if you're a Notre Dame fan and don't believe that Notre Dame receivers will have 500 yards, then you have Tommy Rees offensive syndrome and believe that the scan offense is going to be productive. The last time they had one, though, was 2021. And who was the offensive coordinator in 2021?
Tommy Rees.
Okay, just checking.
Yep. I know. I mean, it's easy to forget that kind of stuff at times, right?
Yeah.
But now let's not forget, though, that even in 2021, Michael Mayer was still the guy who actually led the team in yardage and receptions.
Yeah, I don't think that will be the case. I do not believe that a tight end will lead the team in receiving.
I agree with that for sure. Okay, so we're at the Brian Kelly portion of the show. It's been a long time since we'd had an opportunity to do any VK bashing, but here we are. So Brian Kelly did a sit-down interview with Jacques Doucette of WAFB Television in Baton Rouge.
Of course, his name is Jacques down in Baton Rouge. Like,
that's right.
Wow, cliche.
I actually met Jacques a few years back.
Did you?
Omaha. Yeah. Part of that. Mixed it up with the Baton Rouge media gaggle down there.
Yes, you did.
At the College World Series.
But you had good reason to mix it
when
up.
Our friend Paul Maneri was there.
Yes.
That's right. So Doucette asked Kelly about his defensive line recruiting. And I know a lot of people have seen some of this and been talking about it. Here is Brian Kelly's answer.
Interior D lineman, where are you right now with that?
Great picture.
Well, I think I made it pretty clear in a number of the press conferences that I had that we were in the market in recruiting in the transfer portal looking for defensive linemen. It hasn't fared very well, quite frankly, because, we're selling something a little bit differently. And that is we want to recruit. We want to engage, build relationships. We want to develop, retain, and have success. We're not in the market of buying players, and unfortunately, right now, that's what some guys are looking for. They want to be bought. And look, I understand NIL is part of this, and we have an incredible collective. We have very, very generous opportunities around the greater Baton Rouge area for NIL opportunities. So they are here, but we're not going to go out and buy players. That's not what this is about. This was never about that. We will develop you. We will get you ready for the next step, as we did with Jaden Daniels, as we did with Malik Neighbors, as we did with Brian Thomas. We developed 3 defensive linemen that all got drafted this year, and we'll do that again. But if you're just looking to get paid, you're looking in the wrong place. If you like all the things that we do here in developing our players, bringing you into a championship program, playing in front of the best fan base in America, playing for championships, and having an opportunity for NIL, you should be a Tiger. But if you just want to get, paid, this is not the place for you.
All right, Vince.
Oh, boy.
There it is. Tee off. What do you think?
I feel like I've heard this someplace before. And I'm trying to remember where that could
it have been?
You know what? That's right. It was at Notre Dame from 2016 on. That's when it was. Okay. Whew. It was mind-boggling me there for a little while.
We're shopping down a different aisle, Vince.
Oh.
We're shopping down a different aisle.
It's May 8th today, okay? And we can assume that this was recorded before May 8th, okay? He's already making excuses for lack of success in the fall. He's already making them. Well, we do it differently down here, and we don't like to pay players, and we don't want. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. They just don't want to play for you. You pay players just like anybody else in the SEC. Stop it. He's already making excuses for why they're not going to be good in the fall.
Setting himself up, giving himself a fallback excuse.
He does
That's
this
absolutely
every
right.
year, Sean, and it will be a consistent thing with him from now through the season. Through the season, he will blame the defensive line the rest of the way. Well, people didn't want to come here. They don't want to be Tigers. They don't want to do it like we do it. Come on, man. Like, just stop with the excuse making.
According to On3, they put out a ranking of an NIL Power 5 ranking in terms of the schools that spend the most. Texas number 1, $19.9 million.
Woo.
LSU comes in at number 11 with $10.1 million in NIL. Notre Dame, by the way, 15th at 8.6. So really not that far behind. But you're absolutely right. It's just a built-in excuse. If things go wrong, Brian Kelly has something to fall back on.
Yes.
Yeah, Anthony.
And then on the other side, according to Anthony, and he's 100% correct, it says BK is rigging the game to either outperform expectations and garner praise or use it as an excuse for underperforming. That you nailed this thing 100%.
Under promise, over deliver.
Yes, under promise, over deliver. That is his game, baby. If anybody's been paying any attention, that is his game. This team's not good. People don't want to be a part of what we're trying to do. We're just, we're going to see we're going to coach them up. We're going to coach them up. We're going to do the best we can. And then, when they go out and win, let's say they win 10 games, it's, Brian Kelly, SEC Coach of the Year. Man, he really did something with nothing down there in Baton Rouge. Nothing? Come on now. You're spending $10 million a year on NIL and you got nothing? Come on, man.
And I mean, look, I haven't looked at their defensive line room, but you can't tell me if they wanted to get somebody, it didn't have to be a top of the line defensive lineman. You can't tell me that there was nobody they could have brought in out of the portal. Again, based on what they've got, NIL opportunities and everything else. It's just the same old with Brian Kelly.
Yeah,
is all it is.
Doesn't change. No matter what color he's wearing, it doesn't change. He's already setting up the LSU fans for a crappy season, and then when he over delivers, all of a sudden he's Coach of the Year, Home Depot Coach of the Year down in Baton Rouge. Family.
Salty wants to know if Marcus Freeman will exceed Brian Kelly's years and win total at Notre Dame. This is a tough one.
This is a tough one,
and this is something I've kind of been thinking about for a while, just like what this is going to look like for Marcus Freeman.
Because look, at the end of the day, BK was here for a long time. Yeah. I mean,
12 years.
12 years, yeah.
12 years and a lot of wins.
And that is not – 12 years is not normal, folks. And anybody that follows any kind of college football would agree with that. I mean, 12 years is not normal. And so, what if Marcus Freeman has a national championship or two to his name? Does he really want to stick around for 12 years with the headache of everything that goes along with being the head coach at Notre Dame? I don't know that he does. As a fan, I hope he stays until, they dig a hole for him and you can just roll him in. Like, that would be fantastic. I would love for him to be here for years and years and years and years. The problem is with college football these days, it is very, very taxing. And to be here that long is going to be very, very tough. And look, say what you want to about Brian Kelly, and I just got done, lambasting him. He won a lot of games at Notre Dame. There are a lot of double-digit wins seasons that he had at Notre Dame. He accumulated a lot of wins, man. And it's going to be tough to reach that win total unless he's here for a decade plus. And that's going to be a tall order. So I would say right now, I would say no and no.
I would have to think so as well. But, you do factor in how young Marcus Freeman is already. Sure. I think a big question is going to be, he's already performing at an exceptional rate, even though maybe it's a little bit, it would be at least the standard coming, like he took the baton.
Yeah.
And, like, even though you lost to Marshall and Stanford in year one, the net result out of the thing was a 9-4 season. And last year it was a double-digit win season. So he's already got 19 wins in his first 2 years. That's more than Brian Kelly had.
That's true.
In his first 2 years. And the guy is younger, and he's recruiting at a higher level. One of the questions for him going forward is going to be, because these assistants are going to continue to matriculate and get better jobs the more success Marcus Freeman has. Is he going to be able, to continue I think he's going to be able to attract high level assistants, but is he are they going to be able to continue to perform at that level? But ultimately, I just think because of the job and like you were alluding to, it ages you at some point. Being the head coach at Notre Dame ages you. And whatever you thought about Brian Kelly, 12 years was still a lot. It was more combined than I think his previous three, at least two predecessors combined.
Predecessors. I gotcha. I was saying his stops, but yeah.
His, than what they had at Notre Dame. So I agree. I think that ultimately, because of the job that it is and, everything that goes into it, the odds say no, because Brian Kelly did end up being the all-time winningest head coach at Notre Dame. And regardless of what you think about that, again, he's still the all-time winningest coach. So the odds say that it's not going to happen.
The funny part about all of this is Joe says he could be here for 12 years and still be in his early 50s.
Right.
No, he'll be in his 40s, actually. Because
that's true. He would still be in his 40s.
He's 38 years old right now.
Insane. That's
and
insane.
9 years from now, he'll be 47. So he won't even be in his 50s. He'll be in his 40s, Joe. So your point is even better than you thought it was. He's a young dude.
No kidding. Yeah, Josh says he also doesn't think he'll have a 4-8 season.
God, I hope not.
I don't either. But
I don't think we ever thought Brian Kelly was going to have one either.
Right.
I mean, there was dissension in the ranks going into the 2016 season that a lot of reporters and people on the inside knew, but nobody would have predicted 4-8. No, nobody. I don't care how much dissension and quarterback issues and all of these. Nobody would have predicted 4-8 with the teams that they lost to. No chance.
Ghost X asked this in the chat. We talked about this, I think, on the Friday Rapid Fire show. Who'll be the first Notre Dame player off the boards not named Ben Moore? Oh, he says not named Ben Morrison in 2025. Well, I think it's going to be Riley Leonard, even with Benjamin Morrison.
Yes, Riley Leonard, absolutely, 100%. Yep, that's an easy one. Now, the good question would be not named Ben Morrison or Riley Leonard.
Right.
I think that's the good question that needs to be asked. Who's that going to be?
As of right now, my answer would be either Riley Mills or Xavier Watts.
Okay.
As of right now.
Riley Mills is getting a lot of...
Because it's not going to be a lineman. None of the linemen are at that point. So
true. I'm trying to think now. Howard Cross is getting a lot of love, too, in some of these projections. Which is a little surprising with his size. We'll see kind of how that goes.
That's the only reason I wouldn't put him ahead of Riley Mills is because of his position and his relative lack of size. I think that hurts him going to the NFL in terms of being someone who would be considered that high because of the position he plays and the size that he has.
I will say that I think would be Xavier Watts. If he has another season like he did last year, I mean, he's the defensive player of the year nationally. If he has another season like that, he'll go pretty high as well. So I would say he'd be the third guy off the board.
So Notre Dame men's basketball, I don't know if you saw this, they're reportedly going to take part in a Thanksgiving week tournament in Las Vegas next season called the Players Era Festival. So the event is going to include $1 million NIL payouts for each of the 8 teams that will participate. Players will have future earnings opportunities as well through long-term NIL contracts. So what do you think of this kind of basketball event that Notre Dame is reportedly going to play in next November?
I think this is the wave of the future, man. Like, I would use this in my recruiting pitch if I was Notre Dame, which obviously didn't work in the transfer portal for a big. But I think this is the wave of the future. And I think that if you're going to have NIL, this is what NIL is supposed to be right here. You're on the roster already. We're going to go to a tournament that pays you money in NIL, like in endorsement deals and things like that. I think that's what NIL is supposed to be. And I love this because they're doing it the right way.
As part of the deal, some of the details on this, the players, they're not just going to show up and get the money. They would actually have to participate in some off-court activities while they're out there, which is great.
Love it.
Probably, like go to a children's hospital, maybe, or whatever. It is Vegas, so who knows what those activities would be. But there will be some things that go with it. And the team that ends up winning the event would get even more, like another $1 million potentially to split up in NIL opportunities. But they're also going to go to these events where it sounds like where they can actually network with companies to get other NIL opportunities. And it just feels like if you're hosting one of these events in November and December, like Maui Invitational has been around forever. Pick your event, like the Atlantis thing that they've been doing for the last few years. It just feels like all of these events should have this. And honestly, it feels like this is something that the Final Four should easily be able to set up, because everyone, once you get to the Final Four, all these big sponsors want to be a part of the Final Four. And what's a better reward for the four teams that make it to the end of the rainbow than to have NIL opportunities there for them as well? You're the four best teams remaining in the nation. Like, there should be some of this stuff out there as well. It just feels like they're setting the template with this kind of event for NIL opportunities going forward. And by the way, Alabama, Houston, Oregon, Rutgers, San Diego State, and Texas A&M are the other 6 schools that are on board. They are apparently still working on the 8th and final team that would be a part of it as well. So it sounds like a really cool opportunity for Notre Dame to be involved with next season. Like Anthony says, preseason NIT. Why not? Like, all of these different events. There's all these different tournaments that take place. Like, everything should have an NIL component attached to it, it feels like. Fill in the blank. Brian Curtis speculated on his Press Box podcast that Tom Brady may have done his Netflix roast to basically put all the negative stuff that anyone could potentially say about him, like, get it out there now. Like, everyone has their, just get it out there in the atmosphere now before his TV career begins on Fox when the NFL season begins this fall. That theory is blank.
Not terribly far-fetched. A lot of times you bring up these theories on this show and I'm like, what? Like my mind is still blown away by the Top Gun.
The Reddit
Maverick
Top Gun theory.
Like that. Still can't wrap my mind around that one. This one, I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility, to be perfectly honest with you. It's showing that he's human and, you can throw some jabs at him and it's all, whatever. And you get it all out there. I mean, the fact that he's like, that the NFL spent $20 million on, investigating the Deflate Gate. All they had to do is give him the $20 million. He would have admitted it. Like, I think that's fantastic. I think that's hilarious because we're far enough away from it now that nobody gives a crap. You know what I mean? And so I think there's some validity to the theory. I don't think that he's like, now what can I do to make sure I get all the negative stuff out? Like, I don't think it was that kind of a thing. Right. But I think it's part of it.
But at the very least, even if he wasn't consciously thinking about it, he definitely accomplished that by doing it. And I had never really considered this before, but I mean, he is going to be under a lot of scrutiny once he goes to Fox. And what's Tom Brady never really been, for the most part? Human. That was a word that you just mentioned, right? He's like been this basic. Yeah, he's basically been a machine his entire career, just cranking out Super Bowl wins. And he showed that he could at the very least sit up there and put on the fake smile the whole time while, people are taking shots about his ex-wife and, everything else, deflate gate, like the one, his one trigger moment was definitely the Robert Kraft thing, which I found was interesting. Is like,
of all
be
the
talking
things
about Robert Kraft's massages anymore, but
of all the things, yeah.
I think it's a very interesting theory. And, again, like he's going to be under a lot of scrutiny this fall once he gets on TV. And now it's like the worst thing that could be said about Tom Brady was just said this weekend.
Yeah, that's true.
So like I find it interesting that Giselle took offense to all the things that were said about her and the marriage and everything. Look, it's a roast, right?
Exactly.
No holds barred in a roast. Like it was,
and you divorced him. So guess what?
That's right.
You don't get a say. It's not how it goes. It's not how it works.
Yep. Interesting. Thanks for the super chat, Josh. He says, late to the show, just wondering where you would rank this year's women's basketball team in Notre Dame history. Excited for this season.
This past one?
Like, I think he's talking about the one coming up, that's loaded now. I mean,
who knows?
We think they're going to be really good, but they haven't done anything yet. I mean, obviously, if they win a national championship, they're one of the 3 best teams ever, right? But if they don't win a national championship, there were plenty of other teams that didn't, but got to national championship games. Like the teams you talk about and the ones you hold up there are the ones that win the titles. The others 100%. Were just really good teams that didn't get it done.
I mean, look, based on the roster, this should be one of the best teams that Notre Dame's ever put on the floor, right? I mean, top to bottom should be, but they got to go out and produce. I mean, there's plenty of should be teams out there that don't get a national championship or a World Series or an NFL title or whatever, right? So they've got to go out and do it. But on paper, this is one of the best teams ever. On paper,
absolutely.
But they don't play the game on paper, Sean.
No, they don't, Vince. They play it on the court.
That's why they play the game.
So Tommy asked the question.
Oh, boy.
Where did it go? He's actually asked a lot of questions. But he said, what was the Reddit Top Gun theory? And Salty actually answered it for us already. The theory is that in the sequel, Maverick died in the early plane crash, was in purgatory for the rest of the movie, having to make amends with everyone in his life that he had ever wronged. That's basically good summary there, Salty. Salty was paying attention last week.
He was.
But that was the theory that was posed on Reddit.
That was too much for me. That was too much. No, it's not your question that I had an issue with, Tommy. It was the fact
that the theory
itself. We had to talk about the Top Gun theory again because I just can't wrap my mind around it. So
so we have a lot of questions about cutting our grass.
Really?
Joe wants to know, do you cut your lawn a different way every time?
I go every other. I'm in every other. Straight and then
diagonal.
No, I don't do diagonal. I got too many jungle gyms and whatnot, so it's either vertical or horizontal.
Yeah.
And I vary.
My front yard, I typically try to do it a different direction each time. Like you said, straight one time, diagonal the next. My backyard, because it's got stuff back there as well, I just cut it, get it done.
Yeah. And I may experiment with a little diagonal in the front yard because it is kind of like a postage stamp as far as like, the size and things. So I think that would be a little bit easier. The backyard there's just too much crap back there. It would be too much of a pain in the neck.
Tommy wants to know if we bag up the grass clippings or just let them fly where they may.
I used to be a mulcher, and I really enjoyed my mulcher. I bagged it one time, and my wife was ecstatic, and I've had to bag ever since.
You're
stuck forever.
Doesn't that take forever?
It takes forever. And I got a new mower.
You have to stop all the time.
I got a new mower. I love my mower. It was awesome. But then the deck cracked. And so I had to get a new one. And I was kind of pressured into getting this particular mower. And the bag is smaller than my bag that I like, almost half the size.
Mm-hmm.
I am stopping all the time with this new mower, and I hate it. I
would be out there for 3 hours
if
I stopped and did the bagging or whatever.
Terrible.
And I waited about 5 days too long to mow my yard the first time, and so the grass was pretty tall. And so what
Yeah.
I've dealt with since is I have a lot more like dead grass laying around than I usually have, and I haven't been able to, push it anywhere. So it's like
Right.
part of me wants to bag some of it to get it off the yard because I'm tired of looking at all the dead grass laying around, but at the same time, it's just like I don't care enough. Because like I'm not in a big subdivision with other people around to see what it looks like. I'm just sitting out here, in the country a little bit.
I definitely have competition
So,
from my both of my neighbors, and
see,
my other problem is that I'm very, very busy and I don't get to the lawn as often as I should. And so if I mulch it, it just leaves too much behind. You know what I mean? And because I let it go too long.
Yeah.
So in the prime of the summer, I've got to hit it like every 3-4 days if I want to mulch it. And that doesn't usually occur.
Yeah.
So
I need some big wind to come up and like
Just
dry
take it
thing and
off.
just blow everything
Right.
away. And that's,
I hear ya.
like the leaves are another story in the fall because I actually didn't do any leafing last year
Really?
because we had enough wind that it kind of took care of it. But
Wow.
what's typically happened is, because I've got the mower, the riding mower, and
Yeah,
you
jealous
suck
of
them
that.
all up into your thing. And but my neighbor, older guy, never does anything with his leaves, and so I'll do mine, and then his end up blowing
They
in
end
my
up on your
yard.
yard.
And then I've got to do
Yes.
more.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, we actually just kind of blew some of the remaining leaves off our landscaping, and so I kind of mulched that up when I mowed the other day. Do you care about perfect lines when you cut your own grass?
I care about the outcome. In the moment, I want to get it done. But I do really enjoy going upstairs, to grab a shower after you're done mowing, right?
Then
There's
you
a
look
little
outside.
There's a little window. It's up. It's a story up, right? And there's a little window in the bathroom.
Yep.
You hit the bathroom before you jump in the shower, and you're staring out the window because the window's right above the toilet, right? And I'm staring out the window, and I love looking at those lines, baby. Like that is just a job well done.
Yep.
You know what I mean? I got to tell you, man. There are few better feelings in the world when you're a homeowner than looking at a fresh cut lawn with nice lines. That's what my life has come to now.
I can think of a few, but
it's fair too.
So another Tommy, if neither of you had kids to cut your grass, would you prefer to get it done professionally, pay the kid down the road to do it? How much do you offer the kid if that's your choice? The yard that I've got, the size of the yard that I've got right now, I'd probably have to pay at least $50 because it's not small.
Yeah.
I have just under an acre that I've got right now. And I'm never going to pay any. I'm never going to pay anybody. Nope. I'm way too cheap.
Me neither.
To do that.
Look at you. You know it. You know my answer.
That's my cheap point. Like I buy I bought a new riding mower a couple years ago. I'll just do it myself.
Yeah, I am never going to not do my own lawn. I can't wrap my mind around paying somebody else to cut my grass. It's something I can do. I can do it. I don't like it, but when I'm out there and I got the headphones in, I'm kind of zoned out. Like when you live in a family of 7, man, like getting out there in the yard is not a terrible place to be. And I do have children who should be doing it, but my wife insists that I do it because she says it's the only thing I do around the house. And if I give that up, then I don't do anything.
And what are you going to do?
Right. So it will always be my job. Okay.
All right.
All right.
So final one tonight. DK, you see 2 bags of money fall off the truck. The first one is labeled University of Michigan football. The second, University of Michigan Children's Hospital. Wow. What are you doing with those 2 bags?
DK, I'm putting both bags back on the truck. I just am. I would feel so guilty. Even if I stole Michigan football money, I would still feel incredibly guilty. Incredibly guilty. That's just me. And it's not because Father David is in the chat.
I'll just say you know, when we were at Best, this has been several years ago, is when I still went to Best Buy, but we were coming out once.
I don't know. I feel like there's a story there, but I'll let it go.
But there was a big fat, well, most of the stuff now it's just like you go to Costco, you can get it cheaper or whatever.
Okay,
but,
fair enough. Okay.
There was a wallet full of bills,
Wow.
laying on the ground there, and we took it back in. Gave it to the
you're
guy
a good person.
Could have easily just walked off with it. Now,
or did take the cash out. And
University of Michigan football bag would make me think a little bit. The Children's Hospital bag, that's definitely the football bag.
I know.
Makes you think. There you go. I think DK's in the same boat. I'll give UM the children's. I'll tell you what. Here's what I would do. I would obviously give University of Michigan Children's Hospital money to the Children's Hospital. I would take the University of Michigan football bag and I would give it to the Children's Hospital in Iowa. Iowa.
Oh, well done.
Yes. The ones
done.
where they salute the kids and all that stuff.
I like that. Peyton Manning's hospital in Indy. I think
that's a good one too.
Yep. It's a good one to get after. So yes, I would redistribute. I would not keep for myself. I like that. I'm on board.
Worked it through. All right. Well, that's going to do it for tonight. Look forward to seeing you later this week. Vince, thanks again for being here tonight.
Got it, buddy. You got it.
Good time. And we went for a while, but I guess we started off with a long topic.
We did. We did.
Hit the like button before you leave, and we'll talk to you tomorrow on Ivy Nation Sports Talk.